Welcome to the Library of Humanity podcast. Today we're looking at Stoicism, and Stoicism is practical wisdom from ancient Rome and ancient Greece around the time of Jesus, a little bit before and a little bit after the time of Jesus. It's kind of the first self-help, self-development, and personal growth type writings. And today, if you walk into Barnes & Noble like I did today, there's a section on personal growth and self-help. And this type of these types of ideas that are trying to help us become more self-actualized and better human beings, this is becoming more popular, this type of writing. And so these Stoic writers, these Stoic philosophers were the original. But that's from kind of the European perspective. Today we're going to look at Stoicism from the perspective of both European civilization and global civilization, meaning we have to take into account ancient China, ancient Japan, and ancient India, because these places have rich history, and they had many writings, even long before ancient Greeks did. So ancient Greeks are kind of the European version of early civilization, and these early civilizations looked into the nature of the human, and there's lots of really ancient wisdom there, and we're just tapping into that from the scientific perspective. And so this is we can't lose this wisdom and knowledge of just practical wisdom, because science is just beginning to open up to practical wisdom. For example, through positive psychology and neuroscience and self-help. So we're just because we here in the West, meaning Europe and America and Canada and Australia, we are so attached to materials. So that I'm going to use the word external circumstances for that today. But we're so caught up in becoming rich and having a lot of materials and materialism in our lives because we've been taught that materialism and having a lot of prestige, this is the way to happiness. But many people from 3,000 years ago, for example, 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, they were saying that actually, because life is kind of hard, so the external world for these people was very difficult. They were saying that actually more happiness is found by diving into your soul and diving into your true self. So this is kind of the basics of what Zen is, what meditation is, what Buddhism is, what Stoicism is, and these were what a lot of ancient people, not really super popular, but like for example Aristotle was very popular, Plato was very popular. They didn't talk a lot about how to become happy or where that is derived from, but a lot of people there was more talk about diving into your soul as the source of happiness rather than the external circumstances. So let's look at this. So with Stoicism, I had a friend contact me, one of my best friends from college. He wants to know more about Stoicism. And so related is, so any topic that you're interested in related to wisdom and practical truth, happiness, philosophy, and meditation, spirituality, please let me know. Please comment below on my channel and let me know about what topics you want to learn more about. So let's dive into the specifics of Stoicism here. So Stoicism, I get this from Wikipedia. It says Stoicism is a school of philosophy founded by Zeno in Athens in the 3rd century BC. According to its teachings, as social beings, the path to happiness for humans is found in, first, accepting the moment as it presents itself. Secondly, by not allowing oneself to be controlled by the desire for pleasure or fear of pain. Thirdly, by using one's mind to understand the world and to do one's part in nature's plan. And fourthly, and by working together and treating others fairly and justly. So let's look at those one by one here. So first of all, this sounds a lot like Buddhism and meditation. So basically, Stoicism is an introduction to enlightenment, Buddhism, Hinduism, but more like the meditation and yoga styles of Hinduism. But Stoicism, again, is kind of the European version of it, but is a little bit of has less expertise, I would say, in how to become more knowledgeable in the true self, in the soul, in the spirit, in experiencing God for yourself. So it's possible to experience God for yourself, like the absolute infinity of the world, and that is found by diving into your soul. But this is not widely known by people who align themselves with science merely as the explanation for all things. So very, very important. So as is practical wisdom for how to realize your true self and realize God through your consciousness, and not just by talking about theories and ideas. So again, first it was accepting the moment as it presents itself. So in Stoicism, the idea is the present moment. So the past is an idea and the future is just an idea. It's maybe real for your ego, but it's not real in and of itself, meaning it's not truly real. What is real is that the present moment is always now. That might sound kind of silly, but the now moment is all that has been eternal. It's the only permanent state. And because of that, it's the most real thing. Another way of looking at that is that the now moment is perfect. So not only is it eternal, it's also perfect. So when I was taking my notes on Stoicism here, I realized that Stoicism, or like the philosophy of Stoicism, how they see nature and metaphysics, what they see is that it's a lot like Taoism. So in Taoism, the idea is the Tao, T-A-O. The Tao is the way of nature, the true way of nature. And that not only is nature is not dumb, it is actually infinitely intelligent and conscious and loving. So how nature works is that it is perfect. It's not dumb. So a lot of people who study physics and believe that physics can describe everything, or that biology can describe everything, what they assume, the assumption is that nature itself is like a box with balls bouncing all around the box. So the idea is just there's balls and there's empty space. And those balls are like atoms or molecules, and those are bouncing around empty space. And the empty space is without consciousness and without intelligence. But these types of theories, like Buddhism, Hinduism, and Stoicism, are saying that no, nature itself, that empty space, that all phenomena and materials are happening within, is a loving, conscious intelligence that you can call God if you would like. So the idea is to accept it. So Stoicism doesn't tell you how to dive into, doesn't tell you how you can accept the moment, but in Buddhism, for example, in Zen tells you how to do that by meditating. However, Stoicism doesn't tell you how and why to meditate. It just says accept the moment as it presents itself. Even though, so this is very, very important. So Stoicism is alluding to meditation, but it doesn't tell you to meditate. So accepting the moment. How I would say is how to accept the moment is to see that the moment is perfect, that the moment is always supposed to happen. So any events or any people that enter into the present moment are supposed to be there. They were planned to be there. All events and phenomena happening are not inherently good or inherently bad. It's just that the way that they are. So it's sitting and accepting what is real and what is true right now. So secondly, it says, by not allowing oneself to be controlled by the desire for pleasure or fear of pain. So allowing yourself, so don't allow yourself to be controlled. So by the desire. So desire for Stoicism is bad because this desire attaches you to the outside world, to the external circumstances in your world. And the nature of external circumstances, so like a car that you own, for example, or a motorcycle that you own, or your new girlfriend or your new boyfriend, or your new job, for example. These are very lovely in them, I guess, for a specific amount of time, say like 1 month or 3 months or 6 months. But the nature of anything that is not just the present moment, the pure present moment, the pure consciousness of right now. So anything that is not that, the nature of it is to come into existence and immediately leave, or leave maybe slowly, but it does leave. So the idea is to, in Stoicism, is not to attach, not to have the desire to have something. So in Stoicism, you don't need to have anything. You don't need to have a thing, or you don't need to have a job that you feel good at. You actually can be a Stoic and be extremely miserable from your ego perspective, from the perspective of yourself. So one person I'm going to talk about is Epictetus or Epictetus. That is spelled Epictetus. So Epictetus was a Greek Stoic philosopher, and he was born a slave in modern-day Turkey. And he lived in Rome until his banishment, when he went to Nicopolis in northwestern Greece for the rest of his life. And his teachings were written down and published by his student. Epictetus taught that philosophy is a way of life and not just a theoretical discipline. So again, philosophy is a way of life. So Epictetus was a slave, and he became like self-actualized as a slave. So imagine yourself as a slave, but then waking up to bliss and happiness in your life. How would you do that? You would not be attached to the good and the bad in everyday life. You would be attached, or you would disattach yourself from those and then realize that the present moment is the only true way to be happy. So that's how Epictetus became happy eternally, like permanent happiness, by not relying on the outside world or outside circumstances. So going back to the definition of Stoicism, for pleasure or fear of pain. So people want more pleasure and they want less suffering. So this is the nature of Stoicism and Buddhism, is that human beings, the truth of human beings is to have more happiness and less suffering. And the idea is, in Stoicism and Buddhism, is don't attach to the good nor the bad. Don't attach to them. Just see that it is the way that it is. Because it is the way that it is, and the nature of being is perfect. So you have to accept the perfection of the good and the bad, the good and the evil. So if you see that things are evil, you don't attach to the negativity of the evil. You just see that, okay, this is evil. Maybe my ego wants to fight against that ego, but you actually, as a Stoic or a Buddhist or an enlightened human, you are the witness to yourself. So you're witnessing, you're watching your body, and you're watching your thoughts wanting to change the evil that you see. Maybe you see maybe you want to stop terrorism, for example. But it's your ego that wants to stop terrorism. Terrorism exists in its perfect form. It is meant to exist because it is part of the plan of the Tao, or the plan of God. And it is derived from the ignorance. It is derived from the ignorance that Stoicism is talking about. So terrorism and the Nazis and extreme Republicans or extreme Democrats or anything that is any extreme belief, the extremism is derived from the ignorance. And the ignorance is the attaching to the external world. You're attaching to theories. You're attaching to specific groups of people. You're attaching to the group identity. And you think that it's so important that you're willing to die for it. You're willing to kill others for something that is impermanent, for something that won't last. So in Stoicism, Buddhism, that stuff is not, it's not worth it. Anything that is ignorance. So again, ignorance is attaching yourself to the external world. Anything that is ignorant or based on ignorance is also a plan from God, actually, and that you don't attach to it. So you just see it, you see its perfection and its purpose in life, but you just don't attach to any theories or ideas or groups of people through your soul. So I'm talking about you, your soul, and not your ego. So it's important to separate your ego from your soul. So Stoicism and meditation is talking about soul, and your ego is going to be trying to attach. Your ego, your nature of your ego is to attach to all of these specific external circumstances, like your new job, for example, or some delicious food, like a delicious meal. So, for example, yesterday I was kind of on a diet, but not just a food diet, but like a diet from technology, a diet from driving, a diet from like a lot of things that my ego likes to do. So what I did yesterday was like no dessert, no beer, no internet, and I did yoga. I meditated most of the day, and I just and I listened to one really deep podcast, and the attempt was to live from my true self almost the whole day and not my ego. But it's very, very difficult because society and culture, they teach you how to live in your ego almost 100% of the time. And your ego wants to consume. It wants to consume pleasure, and it wants to consume fear of pain, like it says here in Stoicism. So you want to consume pleasure and consume the fear of pain. So your whole life is based on happiness and fear, happiness and suffering. Your whole life as an ego is based on that. Again, attaching to happiness and trying to avoid suffering. But actually you're attaching to the fear of suffering, like you want to be afraid of suffering. It's a desire that you have, your ego. So in our culture, even our families and our friends and the things that we watch on TV, these are the things that are trying to appeal to our ego and trying to almost build your ego. Like your ego becomes like a barnacle, and say that you're the coral reef, and all of these they're called vasanas according to Ramana Maharshi. But a way to talk about that is like emotional trauma or just attachments. So just any attachments are like barnacles that are on the coral reef. And if you're the coral, so there's things that are becoming attached to you. But in Stoicism or meditation, you're trying to rid yourself of those barnacles or those attachments that are attaching to your soul or your ego. So the idea is to decrease the size of your ego and increase your realization of your soul. So your soul doesn't increase or decrease, but your consciousness can either choose to be attached to the ego or attached to the soul. But you don't really get attached to the soul. It's more like you just are your soul. But the nature of the ego is attachment. Like, oh, I want to be happy and I want to avoid suffering. But your soul sees that the happiness and the suffering are an inherent part of existing. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm very, very passionate about this stuff. So sometimes I make notes, like I made 2 pages of notes for this Stoicism. So I'm going to continue with my notes, but I don't really need them to give you the basic ideas of Stoicism. But I'm going to continue reading so you get more background on the specifics of Stoicism. The third part of that definition is by using one's mind to understand the world and to do one's part in nature's plan. So this is a lot like Buddhism as well, where you use your consciousness to see reality. Use your consciousness to see reality, and you act in accordance with the Tao, or you act in accordance with the way of nature. So if you think of the way of nature as a river, you don't swim against the current of the river. We'll say that like 90% of people are trying to swim against the current of nature because their egos are just so strong and well built that they want to do this or want to do that, but nature itself is telling them through their intuition. So your intuition is nature itself telling you what you're meant to do, and that's what the river is. So the idea is to stop swimming against the current and just allow the river to bring you where you're meant to go. So you just kind of stop swimming, and you listen to your intuition and your soul, and when you quiet your mind, you stop swimming along the river, and you just let the river bring you where you were always meant to go. And that's kind of a metaphor in Taoism, but Stoicism basically is arguing that as well, to do one's part in nature's plan. So very important that nature or God has a plan for everybody, and 100% everybody, because nature itself is just existence, and everybody exists, right? So then everybody is a part of existence. That's pretty obvious, but that's just basic philosophy. And so because you're a part of existence, you are a part of God. Very, very important. And God is, you are like a pawn. So like if God is the chess player, you are the pawn, or you are a piece of the chessboard, and he or it or she is moving you the way that she wants. And that's more the feminine side. So it's more like the feminine side of God is the one that is moving you. The masculine part of God is like the absolute stoic consciousness that is always here. But then the feminine side of God is like evolution, movement, and nature. So that's very, very important to realize as well, is that the feminine part of God is trying to tell you where to go on this river of nature. The fourth part is by working together and treating others fairly and justly. So in Stoic philosophy, the idea is, again, everyone is important. So virtue is saying that everybody has value, and everyone's value is that they were meant to do what God's plan. So with God's plan, everyone has a specific thing they are meant to do, and you are meant to do that, and you are meant to allow others to do their path. So say that there's one giant river, but everyone is supposed to follow that current, the current of the river, in their special way, their own unique way. So again, the golden rule is like, you be you, and you allow others to be them. Very, very important. And that's what fairness and justice are. Okay, so now I'm going to continue, instead of giving my own interpretation, I'm just going to read from Wikipedia directly from my notes so that you can get more of the specifics. The Stoics are especially known for teaching that virtue is the only good for human beings, and that external things, such as health, wealth, and pleasure, are not good or bad in themselves, but have value as material for virtue to act upon. So this is very, very basic. The idea is that virtue, or doing what you are meant to do, or flowing in that river without swimming, just allowing the river to take you where it wants to go, that is the only virtue, that is the only good. Your ego wants to attach to external things. So even your health. So whether you are physically well or you are sick, that actually does not matter. You should be able to constantly have the same amount of happiness, the same amount of bliss, no matter if you are in shape and good looking, or if you're ugly and sick. That should be the same amount of happiness if you are a Stoic, because being good looking and being healthy, for example, is an external circumstance, and being sick and ugly is an external circumstance. So we do not need to attach to those. Those come and go, and that's actually not what we are. So you looking yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm good looking, but you are not yourself. You are not the ego, you are the soul, okay? And then if you are ugly and you look into the mirror and you say, I am ugly, but you are not ugly. You might interpret your ego, for example, as ugly, or your body as ugly, but you are not that. You are the soul, okay? And the soul is God's plan. And it's just pure godness, or pure consciousness. And that's what Stoics believed. Next, we have the Stoics are also held that certain destructive emotions resulted from errors of judgment, and believed people should aim to maintain a will that is in accordance with nature. So here, destructive emotions. So this gets into the self-development idea. The reason why you are very emotional, whether you have a lot of positive emotions or negative emotions, is from your error of judgment. That error of judgment is your inner voice, the voice in your head that is talking. So that's actually evil. So the voice itself, what is the voice in your head always telling you? The reason why you are miserable is because you believe that you are the inner voice in your head. So your inner voice is using your first language and is using images to show you what it wants. Your inner voice wants you to do certain things, but that is error in judgment. That is just pure ego, and your ego is desiring for your body to become powerful and avoid death. But Stoicism is saying the opposite, and Stoicism wants